All right, you grasshoppers. Unfortunately, she's back. I gotta tell you, like all the nice comments. I just telling Jessica, everybody about all the nice comments you're writing about her. So if somebody writes a nice comment about Jessica, it's all about me. It's the focus got to be on me. I don't know what people are. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Excellent, very good. Actually, I know we're going to talk about business a little bit here too, but I know you're really into fitness. Something I've really gotten into intermittent fasting. Have you ever done that? Did we talk about that?
We talked about it last week, and I've never done it. Now,
okay. Man, it's been huge for me. I guess I think we talked about it too, that I always looked at it just as a way to burn body fat and everything, but all the other health benefits from it, like regenerating cells, hopefully sharper.
You made me want to try it. Maybe I'll try it.
Yeah, I mean, I have talked to some people that just can't do it, but basically all it is for me, it's just skip breakfast. I stop eating by 8 o'clock, and then I just don't start again until noon. So
I don't think I could do that. I like breakfast. I love bacon.
I love breakfast as well. Yeah. All right. So everybody that is not aware, Jessica here and I met again. I just saw her and I was impressed by all the things she's done in her life and things she's gone through. And again, one of the things that's impressed me the most is not just like getting through the things that she's done. It's kind of like, okay, this is what I'm facing. Now let's take on more. Right. That's kind of been your attitude. So she's got
my attitude you like the most.
Yes, it is. Yes. So she's got Mad Men barbershops out in Long Island. The two locations are where?
Wantagh and Williston Park.
That's right, too. And then a mother of two fantastic young kids, and yoga, fitness, all that stuff. And she's kind of a new project is helping other people start businesses.
Yep.
So that's where we're going to go today. So I really want to discuss not just the legalities and the paperwork and the LLC and all that kind of stuff, but the whole mentality of starting a business. I'm sure there's lots of people out there that, especially with all this going on, want to start a business, but it's kind of that fear, right? Like, okay, what do I do first? So
I think that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. So now I'm big on, like when I left playing and started my agent business, I had read the books by Mark McCormick, and he started IMG. That was probably the first agent. He was Arnold Palmer's agent, and he wrote books like The 110% Solution and things they don't teach you at the Harvard Business School. And one of the biggest things I got from the books was writing out a list. I know it sounds kind of simple, but he stressed that. Right? Are you big into that stuff?
Into what books?
More writing out a list.
Oh yes, I am a list. I love lists. I make lists for everything every day. It just helps me organize myself.
Totally, right? And he even stressed that when you write out the list, write the things you least want to do at the top of the list, right? Don't put them at the bottom.
Yeah. Because then they're always there. And even when you check other stuff off, they're still there. Yeah. So then you don't feel as accomplished. It's definitely like something to do with your mindset right there.
Right. Yeah, totally. It's like that same mentality for me, like, making my bed perfect in the morning, right? You're starting off, you get it done, right? You got something you need to do, let's get it done. So what would be, if somebody's starting a business, what would be the first thing they need to do?
The simplest thing to do, I think, and to feel accomplished is to pick a name, right, for your business. And once you have that and you've conceptualized that is what you can brand, you need to get the URL and start there. Because it doesn't actually take a ton of effort. It's just more wrapping your head around the process, right? So get your name and get it your www. Name. That's what you need.
Right. And then
Step one.
So is it a name that, you can go to 10 people and you get 10 different opinions of a good name, right? Or is it just a name you say that you want? It's your business and you want it?
Well, okay. So my answer to that is a little complicated because I trust my gut. I'm big on following my gut instincts, but I think that part of having gut instincts and trusting them is trusting yourself and having a lot of confidence. Yeah. And when you're starting out with something new, you might not have that confidence. So it's a hard question to ask. Like now, back then when I started my business and, even before that, I was kind of always just doing my own thing. And I asked for people's opinions, but at the end of the day, I just went with what I thought was best. If you're not that kind of person, I think that having people as a sounding board is a good tool. But at the end of the day, you have to think about what your product might look like in the marketing world. What kind of graphic you would have and how you would pitch it to other people and what would sound succinct enough, but also intriguing. you have to take all of that into consideration.
Right. It's true, right? But I always look to like a company like Red Bull always impressed me. And it's funny why it's impressed, because I just look at Red Bull like it's a can of sugar and caffeine. And when they started, there's plenty of other companies out there that you're selling the same kind of product, but they just marketed it, right? So it's all like, yes, you need like aware of how other people will perceive your name, but it's also that same old mentality. Like, so what do I put into the company? So it's a good name, but I'm going to make it be a great company. Doesn't matter what the name is, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you're great at marketing, yes, that's true, but not all of us are. And I'm one of those people who at first was not good at that. That's something that I had to learn. It wasn't intuitive to me. I'm a left brain person. I'm very methodical, organized. I'm not super creative, but I've along the way learned to be.
Right.
And so at first, I wouldn't have been able to do that. And many people wouldn't. So if you don't have that skill set from the get-go, you need some intriguing name that will help you start to formulate your path.
Right. So ask other people's opinions. And again, like you said, if somebody else has a different personality, like some people just, maybe they've been through more things in their life and they've got more confidence in themselves. And that is a big thing too, right? The more stuff you've done in life, the more times you've done it, you do feel more, you're going to be okay. There's going to be those scary times early.
Well, proof of concept, right? You got through it, so you could do it again. You made something successful, you could do it again.
It's funny too, because I remember when I first started my agent business. So like after, you're a player, I've never booked a hotel before then. I never booked nothing. So now I've got to start this agent business. And I was like, what? That's why the list was so important for me, right? Because I realized I got to write things down and I got to get them done. But it is rewarding too, right? When you take that leap of faith. And I think I was lucky too, from my background. I don't know about you, but it's kind of a different world. But my father grew up on a farm where I grew up in farming. And then probably when I was like 15 years old, he'd been a volunteer firefighter, and he came and asked me if I wanted to be a farmer when I grew up. I said, not a chance. I'm playing in the National Hockey League. So he sold the farm, became a firefighter. And I didn't realize how big of a thing that was, right? Because there's the farm, even though it wasn't a great source of income, that was a source of income to feed the family and everything. He's now getting rid of that farm and now starting a whole new career, right? And that was, it is a little bit of a scary thing to do. So,
100%.
Yeah. But do you think you've grown up like always in your life, always trying new things and reinventing yourself?
No, no. It took me a long time before I felt confident to do that. I was kind of always like, doing my thing and not really worrying about what other people think. But I think when I went to law school, that's when I really started owning myself and pushing my limits and thinking out of the box.
Why do you think law school did that for you?
Okay, so I was in law school. I was terrified to speak in front of people, which is a horrible trait for a future lawyer, because all you're going to do is speak to people. And I thought to myself, like, I love the inner workings of the law, and that's something I always wanted to do. But now I'm here and I can't even raise my hand in class because I'm so terrified. So what am I going to do about this? I could just like go through school and not talk, which would probably not be helpful to me or my, future jobs. So I was like, F this. I'm going to join moot court, and I'm going to just like put myself out there in a position where I have to speak. Right. And I did it, and I was good at it. That's the thing. And then I was like, oh my God, I'm good at this. And I got on the team. And then from there, my confidence just built in every way, like throughout my life.
Did you find that the more you were prepared to speak, like know the content, it was easier for you too, gave you more confidence?
Yeah, definitely. And, sometimes it just takes, I think sometimes the thought of sitting down and doing something is overwhelming, but what we don't realize is if we take 8 hours to sit there and really get a grip on what we're about to do, that's going to save us time for the rest of the week, for example. So, like, I think there's so many things that's applicable to, and you could save yourself time by just investing that initial day into really sitting down and getting to know whatever you're selling or doing.
Right. That is the thing, right? Like that you've got that big daunting task ahead of you, like looking for a new job or meeting somebody. If you sit there and look at the task, you're going to get overwhelmed. But you look at the first thing you need to do to complete the task. That's all you need to worry about. I was so lucky I get to interview these Navy SEAL guys, and I told the story many times. I had this guy, Tom Shea. He was awarded the Silver Star. And he talked about how he was in a battle and he got knocked down into a building, and he was thinking, I just may lay here and die. And then he got up, but there was like all these enemies around, the bad guys. And I asked, it's kind of like he was setting me up for it, because I asked him, I said, so did like some heroic moment come over you? And you could tell, like he does, like we do, he speaks publicly as well. And you could tell he kind of seized on the moment, when I asked him that question. And he said, nope. He says, I had an enemy 3 meters in front of me. I had an enemy 30 meters in front of me, on and on and on. I just needed to worry about the first enemy in front of me. That was my first task. And then I'll worry about the next task later. And I think that's important, right? When you're starting that company like that,
Yes.
Don't look at that. Oh my God, I got to start a company. Okay, what's my first task I need to do?
And that's why, back to the list, I don't know if you should just have the top 3 things you don't want to do come first. I feel my strategy, right, is to put something simple, 2 hard things that I don't want to do, and then a couple of simple things, because then at least when I cross one thing off the list, I feel energized. And then it doesn't seem so bad taking on that first item that I'm not looking forward to.
That's a good point. Yeah, don't put something up there that like may almost be impossible at first, right? Get on a roll a little bit with things.
Yeah.
Good. All right. So you've got your URL now. So she's often me asked this question because I've started companies. Most companies are LLCs now, right? I mean, if you're starting your own company.
I mean, it really is a preference that people have, how much control they want over the company, what tax benefits they're looking for, what they see the future of the company being. I think that has a lot to do with it. But I would say generally, most people start LLCs.
So there's a few issues there. Should you be sitting down with a lawyer or somebody? I mean, right.
I mean, you need a lawyer and you need a tax consultant, and don't be overwhelmed by this. There are lawyers out there who will do this for you for a set price. It's not necessarily an hourly fee. If it's something small, they could consult with you on that. Same thing with a CPA or a tax advisor, but these are really important things you need to understand before you form the company. And forming the company is the next logical step after getting the name and the URL, right? Because now you need some kind of legal entity to start running a business through. So this is stuff you need to do immediately.
And so what if people with limited budget or whatever, and they start the company and they don't do something correctly? Can you go back and fix those mistakes? Like if you wanted to be an LLC, but you didn't make it an LLC, can you go back and change it?
Most of the time there are ways to do that, but to be frank, it's pretty annoying. Once you have a bank account opened, if you switch from one to the other, one corporate entity to the other, they might make you get a new tax ID number, and then you'd have to restart your bank account. So can it be done? Yes. If it needs to be done, absolutely, but it will be a pain. So I think to get it out of the way, instead of rushing to do it as like one of the things to check off, I think you really should take the time to meet with the experts that can help you make the best decision. And of course, listen, things change. You don't see a company growing and then suddenly it grows and you need to pivot and change, and that can happen. But the most that you can anticipate, the better.
Right. So I'm trying to think where I'm going here. So if there's decisions like thinking ahead of, okay, am I going to hire employees? Am I not going to have employees? Am I going to have a building, a structure, all those kinds of things? And I guess it's the nature of the business that's going to determine those things. But again, is there something that needs to be done that you're saying to yourself, okay, I don't have a building right now, but I'm going to need a building if things get to a certain point? Is there things you do to prepare for that?
I mean, you need to sit down and think about what you want out of the company. If you're just like, listen, I'm going to own this by myself, I'm going to live off of it, and that's what I want to do, that's one thing. If you want to grow and become massive and take on partners and hire employees, that's a different animal. And you need to know what you're protected under in terms of liability. LLC, limited liability corporation. For those of you that don't know, that the structure of the company is also going to determine how much insulation the person that owns the company gets in case someone sues you. So these are really important things. Like at first you might think, oh, I don't care, whatever it is. But then a problem comes up, you're going to care.
Right. Yeah. And I love that point there too. So everybody starts off a company, everything's great. You maybe have partners and everybody's getting along. But you always have to think the worst stuff when you're forming the company, right? Like, okay, my partner is my best friend right now, and we're going to start this company. We're shaking hands. We're thinking we don't even need a document to outline our agreement. But you have to think that way, right? You got to think, okay, what if we have to make a decision? We both totally disagree in the other person's opinion. Now we got a problem. And how do we solve that before it gets to the point where it's bad?
And it's really hard being an entrepreneur because sometimes you have this idea and it's like, "Oh my god, this is a great idea. I wanna get it up and running. I wanna get it now." And you try to get it all up and you kinda miss some stuff, and then later on, it might be more difficult. Like, if you and your friend are doing it together, but you don't have the time because you need to take a client that wants to purchase your services, you wanna get it up and running so you get the money in the bank. Then you missed a step with
Right.
making an agreement with your partner, and now what? Probably you're not gonna do that and take that step until there's a problem, and then it's contentious,
Right.
and you don't have anything governing the circumstances. It's gonna be difficult.
So, let's go through that scenario again. You've got a partner, everybody's happy, your great idea, clients come to you, let's get started doing a business. I have seen cases where people say, well, let's just have an email together where we're outlining what our agreement is. Is that enough of an agreement? If you've got the details of the agreement, is that enough to cover, let's say, the worst case scenario? Now you get into a dispute and now you go to court or whatever.
I mean, it's going to depend what state you're in, first of all, because the state's going to govern it. But I would say in most circumstances, it's kind of indicative of what you guys were thinking at the time. Whether it's enforceable or not is going to be a different issue. You know,
Right.
it's going to be a judicial decision, and you don't really want your life in the hands of a judge. If to the extent that you can avoid it, you want to, because you don't know what's going to happen. It's like a roll of the dice.
Right. So this is going to sound like a terrible analogy, but it's kind of like a prenuptial agreement, right? I mean, you hate to look at the fact that you're getting together, but you're thinking about the breakup down the road. But I mean, that is the nature of marriages and business, right? That
It's
they don't.
basically the same thing.
Yeah.
Marriage is a business, right? Like you don't realize it at the time, but you're entering into a
Yeah.
contract for your entire financial life.
Right.
That's crazy. No one tells you that before you get married.
I know. When I was in the agent business and guys were getting married, it was a delicate thing. But I said to a few guys, "Have you discussed the prenuptial?" And they're like, "No way, it would never happen." But I think, okay, and I felt like it was my responsibility to just have that conversation you just did. That especially if people are one person's making all the money and the next one isn't. All right, so we go through that scenario. Let's go back to the business setting. Okay, so I know that's bad. 2 divorced people. I got twice as many as you. So let's say you've got a business partner and you've been friends for a long time and he doesn't want to do an agreement. He thinks, he's thinking, what, we're best friends. We shake hands on this deal. And I've seen people like this. We don't have to have a contract. We get along fine. Why would we need a contract? It's almost like insulting to me that you'd ask for a contract. But you're the guy on the other side saying, you've got advice from a lawyer, you've got advice from a CPA, and you're saying, no, we need an agreement. How far do you go? Do you just say, listen, I'm not going to go to work with you unless we get an agreement?
It's funny because I have that scenario with my ex-husband, honestly. Like we never made an agreement because we were married, and now we're divorced, and then we were fighting and about the divorce, and we never finalized.
You're co-owners of the Mad Men barbershops, right?
Yeah. Oh. So this is why I'm telling you from my own personal experience that you need to, before you move forward, you need to finalize your agreements. You should not keep going without that. If this person that you're with doesn't want to do that, then you need to part ways and do your own thing.
Right. It's almost like a bad sign right off the bat, right? That if we can't agree on doing an agreement, then how are we going to agree on running a business?
What I've learned in business is you really need to separate yourself emotionally. And it's a weird thing because it's your baby and you're an entrepreneur and you feel real strongly about this product or a service or business. And so you are invested emotionally, but you can't take things personally. Like business is business. You need to succeed. You're not in this to make friends. You're not in this, you're in this to make money. So you got to make money. So
Right.
The best thing to do is what's best for the business. And, I think people get emotional like, oh, it's insulting. No, it's not. It's business. It's not insulting. It's not personal. I'm not trying to, aggravate you, but it's
Right.
business.
That is true, right? Like if somebody, you can't get emotional about business. Like if somebody does something that's personally wrong to you while you're running a business, then I guess you need to defend yourself. But if it's about decisions about running the company, like I help people raise money sometimes too. So people are coming to me and they've got a product and they want me to help them raise $10 million, let's say. So I feel like it's important for me after doing it for a while that I ask the proper questions because I know what the investors are going to ask. So if I want to make sure that these guys can really answer the question that I know the investor is going to ask. And I have had people like that where they get insulted because it looks like I'm trying to be negative towards their business. And I think maybe it's a lesson. It is a lesson for me. I realize when I start the conversation, I need to say to them, listen, guys, I don't mean to sound negative, but I need to ask these questions, right? And don't you think that running a business, the communication is a big part of that too? Like you've got to.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we get in the shop all the time. We are one of the busiest shops, so people complain about we don't have a waiting list, for example. No other barbershop has this, but because we are like a lifestyle brand and we're fancy, they expect this from us. And I keep trying to tell them, really? Well, these were my ideas and we tried to implement them and they didn't work. Do you have any more ideas? Because I'm willing to hear them. And then they're like, oh, like, I've already thought this through, guys. Like, it's cool, but you have to say it in a nice way because people think that whatever they're saying to you is like the best thing and you probably never thought of it. Meanwhile, all you do is eat and breathe and sleep this business. And you're like, trust me, I thought about it from every angle. So I've learned to just take a step back and be like, people think they're being helpful. Don't take it personally. At first I would get aggravated and now I'm just like, all right, yeah, sure. Mm-hmm.
That is true, isn't it?
Yeah.
People, in a lot of ways, they're good people. Maybe they just want to help out. Oh, you got to do this and you got to do this.
Totally.
Yeah.
And but you're right. Communication is key. Like the way you say something, it could be abrupt or you're in a bad mood and we all have those days and the person's just turned off. Right. Whereas if you were in a better headspace at that moment, you would have just been able to, dissipate the situation.
Definitely. So, okay, now you've got a company and you need to get investors. So one of the big things is a few issues there. An investor will want to know what your valuation is. What are you valuing the company at? But you've just started the company. You don't have income. So how do you come up with a number?
Projections. You gotta be good at projections.
Right.
It's listen, I think a lot of people just starting a business are probably not going to have this issue because at first they don't necessarily offer to investors right away.
Right.
This is for like a more more advanced clientele, I guess you would say.
Right.
But yeah, you have to get projections and you have to base it off of the interest that you've garnered up. They're going to want to see most investors. And if you've ever watched Shark Tank, they want to see the proof of concept. Is your price point? Are people interested in you at this price point that you're offering? If you're not getting interest, that shows that you're not in the right space. So you need to be aware of whatever your business is, what you can do to try to project what your income would be, because otherwise, why would an investor believe in you?
And don't you think most times too, with a shrewd investor, kind of irrespective of where you're at in the process with your company, they're going to try to push back on your evaluation, right? They want to get a lower evaluation, right? So
of course.
Right. You need to be prepared for that. And then that's kind of the thing. Okay, your negotiation, do you bump the numbers up a little bit knowing that the investor is going to pull back on that, or do you kind of keep it totally accurate? From what you're saying, it seems like you're better to just be totally accurate because the investor is going to think, well, if your numbers are too high, that maybe you just don't know what you're doing. It gets turned off by that.
Yeah, I don't think it's a good idea to puff up your valuation. Now, in terms of negotiation, everyone knows a negotiation tool is not to go out with what your lowest is because someone's initial instinct is to just always get a deal from you. But valuation, no, you can't do that because you need to establish some trust and credibility with this person. And if they know, they're going to know. If they're an investor and they have money, they're going to know if you're BSing them or you're telling them, an accurate number. And you don't want to lose credibility from the get-go because your investor will be gone. And I think an important thing when you're starting up is, yes, your valuation is important because future investors are going to see that information. But if you have a great person that you could partner with, you might want to consider, giving them a number that maybe is under what you're comfortable with if you think this person's going to add great value, because there is something to be said about that.
Yeah, totally. Now I hear the term all the time, skin in the game, some money to keep you awake at night, right? So most investors will want, if they're going to invest in it, they want to know that it's just not their money that's at stake, that you've got skin in the game. And you hear some people say, well, I've got sweat equity into it. I really didn't put cash into it, but I put all the time in it. That's really not enough, is it? Like that investor, a smart investor, most times is going to say, I want to know that you're in this with me. And, like if I'm writing a check for relatively small amount, $500,000, some investor, yes, I'm obviously worth millions of dollars to be able to invest that, but I'm worth millions because I'm smart with my money. I don't want to just hand you $500,000 and then you just close the doors and I'm out the money, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think they want just as much as you do. You want a partner, who's going to be and add value to your company because you don't want to give away equity if you're not getting something in return.
Right.
And money's not enough. Like $500,000, that's great, but if you could get someone who could give you 500,000 plus they could bring their intelligence and their strategies to the table, that's what you really want because that's going to last longer than your $500,000.
Right.
And they're not going to do that unless they see that you're invested too.
Okay. And you mentioned the term equity there too. So the other option is to try to take on debt. Now, if you get some investors want to do that, those hard money lenders, right? I mean, sometimes they're looking at 20% interest, numbers like that. Do you want to stay away from that?
It really depends on where you're at. For me, I bootstrapped my company and there was a lot of positive. Uh, there was a lot. Was that for me? Or are you reading
No, I was
something?
reading it.
I think having bootstrapped it was a big challenge for me. I mean, that for people that don't know, that means that like we invested our own money.
Right.
We didn't take on any partners or investors or debt. And there are positives to that because you own the company and now you can make all the decisions, but it is your money on the line. But I think what that taught me is how important that is. And now if I ever take on an investor, I will know exactly what they're feeling when that happens. Debt is a different animal like that. If you get equity from someone and the business doesn't work out, you don't have to pay them that. They're taking a risk. If your business doesn't work out, there are certain debts that are not going to be forgiven. And you need to be aware of what those are and what exactly you're taking on. If you could afford it, the last thing you want to do is take on a debt that you can't afford to pay back. And then what? Now you're in a worse position.
And in most of those startup cases, if somebody's going to give you money like that, it's that hard money lender, right? That he wants like a high interest rate. Excuse me.
Yeah.
So, all those expenses paid and all that kinds of stuff to get into the investment. So it's that's the hard part. You look at the debt. So, and I think people think, I'm going to be successful. I know I can pay it off. Well, I mean, there may be a period of time where you're trying to pay off debt where you really don't have any income yet either, right? So maybe you've got to work.
Oh, yeah.
So you got to make a deal that maybe there's no interest payable for 6 months or something like that.
You really have to balance that like fortitude. Like I could do this. I'm going to do it. I'm going to make it successful because you need that. But you also have to balance it with smart, calculated risks. You can't just start taking out credit cards, taking out debt willy-nilly. You really have to pick and choose what you can afford, what you can utilize and capitalize on to try to make something happen without tanking before you even start.
Right. Yeah, totally. And now another term people use all the time is friends and family. So very often people, when they're starting, before they go to a big investor, they'll go to the friends and family and try to get money to start the company up with that. That's kind of a dicey thing too, right? I mean, I know you're first, it's just that conversation to say, okay, write me a check for $25,000 because you're my friend or you're my family. Right.
Well, it's twofold, right? It's weird. It's weird to do that, right? But those are probably the people that will help you when you have no proof of concept. But at the same time, future investors will look at what you gave to whom for what price, and they might use that against you in negotiations with them. You also don't want to start spreading your equity thin. You can't give away too much too soon because that's gold.
Right.
And, eventually if you price yourself out, if they all want to work against you to take over, they can because they'll have enough. So it's a really delicate balance, and you really should be advised by someone who is knowledgeable about these things and not just kind of go do your own thing.
Yeah, like this sounds like a good idea. Let's do this. Or we'll worry about that later on, right? Because no, you got to worry about it now because it's going to happen. Like if you do go friends and family with the expectation that you get a big investor in and he's going to pay back the friends and family, well, not every investor wants to do that, right? I'm not going to put my money in to pay baay your friends and family. I'll invest in the company and they can ride along with us. But
you mentioned before, like starting up, you don't have a lot of money, but there are things that you need to pay for. You have to do it. It's an investment in you. It's an investment in doing things the correct way. And I think those things are an attorney, a financial advisor to make these decisions because these will affect you forever. This is forever for your company. So you need to iron them out, pay the money. It's worth the money to do things right.
Right. All right. Well, so we're going to come back to this subject again next week. I think this is, I was very interested by this. I thought we'd go farther along in this, but I think it was good that we talked about all the things we need to think about at the start before you get going. Right. And next week we'll go on through the process a little bit more, but that was fantastic. So thank God here there wasn't too many nice comments written about you. So my ego is still intact.
Oh no. Are there bad comments?
Yeah, no, I'll read through them here. I'll erase all the good ones and just leave the bad ones. Okay.
Well, so there'll be none because there's no bad ones.
Yeah. That's great. All right, great talk. We'll do it again next week, guys. We'll continue talking about setting up a business. We'll go a little farther through the process. Thank you, ma'am. Good to see you again.
Awesome. Good to see you.
See you next week, everybody.